unfortunately, as you know, we all got hit with this COVID crisis sometime late February, and obviously it escalated from March onwards. And one of the guidelines that we had to follow was, and that was affected in the very early stages for a very long period, was places of worship. And that was a very difficult time for the community that heavily relies on coming to the center for their daily 5-time prayers and other activities as well. But we were where we were. We had to comply because the priority was to save lives and also try and take the burden of the NHS in the same process. We have a great responsibility, and of course we have very many large number, a group of elderly worshippers that we were hell-bent on making sure they were protected. One of the measures we did was when we were about to reopen, when the government said they eased the concession, obviously we still had to comply with various guidelines that the government put out, and maintain the social distancing even within the center for prayer purposes and for socializing. We employed a professional body, Faith Associates, to carry out a risk assessment of the whole building prior to opening our doors again. This was obviously done, and we were certified, and there were certain assurances that we had to comply with. Hence, we have a rule of 2 meters distancing when the worshippers come in. For Friday, which is our main body of prayers, where we expect a large number, of course, through social distancing and 2 meters separation, our capacity was reduced to 170 roughly. But people were only allowed to attend Friday prayers through Eventbrite. We set up an app where they could go and book themselves. So the reason for that was that we wanted to know exactly who was attending, and in case of an outbreak or unfortunate incident, we were able to track and trace people who attended our place of worship. So that was done. So the only people allowed on a Friday, say 170 people, is we have two Jamaats sessions, which is roughly first prayer and second prayer. And what we do is everybody has to have their app on the mobile. They also need to wear a mask. Your temperature is taken. Anybody who's not registered is not allowed in. Anybody who does not have their prayer mat, a bag for shoes, face mask, or if there's anything untoward, they're not feeling well, they'll be turned away at the gate. So these are the measures we've taken to protect the wider society and ourselves foremost. All other activities that we would normally carry out in the centre were terminated and are still terminated to a degree. Be mindful about was that we normally, because of our 5 congregational prayers, Friday prayers, we have a very close-knit community. We obviously see people who come on a regular basis, so there's a well-being issue there, and of course we lost touch, social touch that we would normally have in the centre, that wasn't taking place. But what we did was, through our WhatsApp messages, we have a huge group, Telegram, through our social media networks, we reached out to the community that we were still around, we were still here to help and support those who needed it. So obviously we have people who could not go out shopping because obviously most of the shops are closed and there's big queues as well. So we had a hotline of 3 or 4 volunteers from within the community and from within our executive group, whose numbers were heavily advertised, and people would, and they did, in fact, get in touch with these people for their shopping to be done and delivered at home. And also we made regular calls to those who were vulnerable, probably living on their own and isolated in some way, that we reached out to those as well by contact. And if they needed any help or assistance or needed to go somewhere, we would try and accommodate that as best as we could. So this wasn't just to the Muslim community. This was also then relayed to other communities as well. Anybody and anybody. We started off saying that those people, we individuals, I myself need to take responsibility for my own neighborhood. That's where you start, because I'm familiar with it. If they were elderly people, of which I know some who are in the 80s, we would visit them or ring them up and say if they needed shopping, even basic things like if they needed to buy a newspaper to keep them company. So we would do things like that, and that is still going on because we still don't have these elderly people coming to the Center for Prayers. We're also very thankful both to the various institutions from the government, from NHS, from public health, and of course our local council, Hillingdon Council, for putting out messages that we then use to relay to our own community through our social media network. And of course washing hands was paramount, as the Prime Minister always made sure that he got that across. And of course covering your face is very, very important, wearing a face mask and keeping a social distance, key elements that we all need to practice and implement within our private lives and of course within the wider environment. You might say I'm not wearing a mask, but I'm socially distancing well over 2 meters for this interview before anybody criticizes me for that. But that is some of the things we've taken, and we still have that implemented fully in all our gatherings and our interactions with other people within the community. We ask the worshippers before coming for any of their prayers, congregational prayers, particularly Friday as well, to carry out their wudu, which is the name we give to the purification at home before coming to the mosque. That is another protective layer that we've implemented. Some of the activities that we have here is obviously we have evening madrasa classes that run in the evenings and weekends as well. Obviously for social distancing purposes we terminated those classes as well, but some of them continued to a degree online because some kids wanted to keep up, and a few of them registered online so the teachers could do it by using Zoom facility, which was of great help. Obviously all of other activities like ladies have meetings, they have sessions, tea, coffee mornings, linking up with other charity groups and groups, they all came to an end as well. So these are some of the impact that we've had. Any sporting activities that we had organized or would take place, gatherings or talks for the elderly, well-being sessions, they were all terminated to protect the community.